All right, oh, that was my voice, huh? Ready? All right. So it is now 6:30 and this meeting is now called to order. I would like to welcome everyone. And also to let you know that we have copies of the agenda. If there's any copies still left, I think you all took them, right?
I can see one.
Oh, okay. All right. Anyway, if you haven't had copies, I think there's one left there. Okay, I will now ask the principal management analyst to take attendance by roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Treadwell.
Present.
Commissioner Boyko.
Present.
Commissioner McDonald.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Webb.
Present.
Vice Chair Sylvester.
Here.
And Chair Nakito.
Here.
All present. We have a quorum.
Well, since everyone is here, I don't think there will be need for us to do the absentee, right? So we'll skip that, correct? Okay, thanks for everyone for being here. I will now move on to minutes approval. The minutes for the March 7th, 2024 regular meeting have been delivered to commission members and posted on the City Hall bulletin board. If there are any corrections or additions, a motion is in order to approve this meeting otherwise. Any corrections? Did I see you? No? Oh, no, no one? Oh, I thought you said there was a correction. Okay. All right. So since there is no additional corrections, now a motion's in order to approve the minutes, so. Who will be-
So moved.
So moved. And who will be seconding that?
I'll second.
Thank you. So, if all are in favor of the minutes being approved, say aye.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Motion passes.
Okay. So now this portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter not on the agenda. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes to make their comments. Please note that state law prohibits the commission from discussing or acting on any non-agenda items. In the recent weeks, I would like you to know that in the recent weeks, several of our neighboring elected decision-making bodies, as well as the Mountain View City Council and Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, have been subjected to disruptive racist verbal attacks by anonymous callers during virtual public comments. The City of Mountain View is fully committed to racial, religious, and cultural equity and justice, and we strive to create a welcoming space and inclusion of all community members. The Human Relations Commission welcomes respectful and non-threatening public comments regarding matters within the Commission's purview. Comments deemed otherwise pursuant to the City Council Code and the Government Code may be grounds for terminating a speaker's comment immediately. For those attending via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function or press *9 on your phone to make a comment. The commission will first receive comments for those in person. So the floor is now open for comments.
Our first speaker is Paying Lee.
Hey everyone, Paying, she, her, back here again. I actually, I wanted to comment on the minutes from last time. So I'll first give that and then share another comment, but we wanted to be, public commenters and I had come last meeting asking kind of some support or requests that the HRC could ask City Council in helping us with addressing the call for immediate permanent ceasefire. So I think we wanted some clarification or correction to the minutes to more specifically indicate that's what the majority of our comments were on, was asking for request referral from the City Council regarding the community's call for a resolution, a proclamation, a statement with ceasefire in it. But to kind of continue on that line, I wanted to kind of ask this body what it can do, what it needs to do in response to what the community is working on. And I would I think the community members and we would love to have some sort of clarification on what this body can do. In the past, as you all know, not just the past months, but I'll focus a little bit on the past April and March on what the community has continued to do. We did go to city council the past few times where folks were still stressing the importance of the call for immediate and permanent ceasefire. And a lot of community members have also asked for the setting of military aid conditions that the US really should seriously consider in light of all this. And folks have been working on different angles, including, you know, the importance of protest and demonstration and upholding the fact that Mountain View is a human rights city, upholding democracy. So I wanted to kind of share that context with you all on what a lot of different community members across Mountain View have been working on and still continue to work on. There was actually a rally and protest this past weekend in front of Palo Alto, inviting, you know, our Bay Area communities to really protest against what's going on in Gaza right now, from starvation, famine, decimation of all infrastructure in a civil society, as well as long-term effects of what's going to happen to people, Palestinians in Gaza, as well as our Palestinian neighbors here. And we actually were able to hear from a doctor who did a medical aid mission who went to Gaza, Dr. Mohammed Zubeh. He's actually a local doctor in El Camino Hospital. And he told us about, you know, the killings of children, men, women, all civilians, as well as the systematic targeting of healthcare workers. So just clarification on what this body can do in response to what the community is still working on, still calling for our own elected officials and city councils to do. Just trying to figure out how the HRC is gonna
Thank you.
support and respond.
Thank
Thanks.
Next speaker.
Do we have any online speakers?
Do we have
One online,
Do you know the name?
Clara Jessup.
Claire, you can speak now. Oh, Clara.
Can you hear me? Hi, my name is Clara Jessup, and I'm a Mountain View resident, and I just wanted to kind of second what Payne was mentioning. I wasn't able to comment in the last meeting. I wasn't able to unmute myself for some reason. But I've been, you know, part of the community efforts to ask Mountain View City Council to call for a permanent and immediate ceasefire in Gaza, and really trying to seek, what can HRC do to help the community feel heard and for action to be taken appropriately, which is the call across Mountain View right now. And I think applying pressure to federal government is really key right now, as we aren't being listened to by our elected officials. And I think HRC is a great avenue to take to help us put forth the work and actually accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, which is to have a statement on a permanent and immediate ceasefire. And I think also what Payne was mentioning, you know, beyond that, what can we comment on, especially as a human rights city? Can we talk about the Leahy Law and how important that is about conditioning aid to countries that are in human rights violations? And I think, you know, we want to stand up for what's right. We want Mountain View to represent us. And this is an issue that affects us, that we're all involved with. And we would really appreciate your help in, you know, guiding the city council and working with them. And yes, I'm also curious, you know, what avenues can you help us with in that regard? It's really important for the community, and I think it would really help all of us feel heard and taking action together. And we would appreciate your assistance in that. So it'd be great if that could be actually put on the agenda and talked about that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is now closed for public comments. We will now move on to unfinished business. So item 5 and item 5.1, it's Gender Civility Roundtable Ad Hoc Committee. The Gender Civility Roundtable Ad Hoc Committee will present an oral update and no action will be taken on this item. Who will be presenting the update on behalf of this committee?
I will.
Go ahead.
Well, I am really proud of my fellow subcommittee members. We have put together an event that's being hosted on April 18th, as we've talked about in the past. But we have publicity we can share with commission members, and we truly would appreciate your help getting the word out to all of your networks, your social media, people you work with, people you know in the community. We have a lineup of 4 amazing speakers. A trans woman who works for the County of Santa Clara in the LGBTQ Affairs Office. A cisgendered woman who has worked in Silicon Valley technology companies for over 20 years. A woman that works at Castellea who interfaces with young women and can talk about how young women are seeing gender in the community, as well as a gay man who will talk about a men's perspective. So we will have a quick panel and we will follow that with our traditional table conversations facilitated by Candidly Speaking. So a very exciting, very information-packed evening. April 18th. And Laurel, can you get flyers or they've been sent?
Do we have a venue?
The Mountain View Community Center.
What time is it?
6:30.
6:30.
Are there any questions for the committee? Sorry. Well, I have a comment. It's like, it sounds very interesting and we're all looking forward to it and to hear the progress and the update. Looks like you have a great variety for your panel. So we're all looking forward to that. And thank you for the good work done already.
Yeah, great time doing it.
Yeah, awesome.
Met some great people along the way.
Good. So next is item 5.2. This is the Storytelling Project Ad Hoc Committee. The Storytelling Project Ad Hoc Committee will present an oral update. No action will be taken on this item. Who will be presenting the update on behalf of the committee?
Maybe. We're looking forward to taking the next steps. We're waiting on both some legal verbiage and we're waiting on some notes from our fellow commissioners that we will be resending out that link soon to hopefully get some last minute ideas if there's any conflicts, and we're excited to have it started soon. But we're still waiting on the last few steps.
Do you guys have a date? I don't recall. No?
Not yet, no.
No.
We're waiting on a few things, so.
Okay. Are there any comments, any questions for from the commissioners? Tongue twisted today.
I'd just like to add on to that. Thank you for giving me the update that, just to reiterate, we will be sending out, again, our draft materials, and we really, really appreciate, your perspective on it, even if your feedback is just, I like this, here's an idea.
Mhm.
We want to make sure that we're not just echoing our own ideas at each other. So would really love to get your feedback, when we send that out.
Okay, we'd like to open this to the public if you have any comments on this item. Okay, there's not, so we'll be moving on. So we'll now move on to item item number 6, which is public hearing, 6.1. Funding recommendations for the fiscal year 2024 to 2025 annual action plan. The commission may take action on this item. The commission will now receive a presentation on this item from Affordable Housing Manager Julie Bernard. Housing Director Wayne Chen is available to answer any questions.
Great.
You may
good
now
evening.
present.
Chair, Vice Chair, thank you for the introduction and commission members. I'm Julie Barnard. I'm your Affordable Housing Manager. I started in January, so this is my first time presenting to not only this commission, but a public speaking event for the city. So here we go. Thank you. So I'm here to present the funding recommendations. I'm just gonna look here so I can talk this way and not at the screen. Funding recommendations for fiscal year 24-25, the annual action plan for the city's federal community development block grant and home investment partnership, otherwise known as CDBG and home program funding. All right. The purpose of this item is to receive input from both the HRC as well as the public on the fiscal year 2024-25 annual action plan. It's also for the HRC to provide an opportunity to provide funding recommendations to council on the annual action plan. Just a little bit of background. As a reminder, each year the city receives an annual allocation of CBDG and home funding from the federal government. I'll talk a little bit more about those amounts in a minute. This funding is governed by the 5-year consolidated plan, and each year we have this exercise of generating an annual action plan. So that's what we're working on right now. A portion of this funding, 15% from the CBDG, I guess bucket, funds public services on a 2-year funding cycle. So last year was our first year of the funding cycle. This year we have no new applications since it's the second of the 2-year. In addition to the CBDG funding, we use some of our general funds for the public services to supplement those that don't qualify for the CBDG funding, since it's really specific in what the CBDG funding will allow for. So in addition to that, the CBDG and the home programs will also fund capital projects such as affordable housing development, or to further affordable housing development. So if you'll bear with me, and these next few slides are very dry, but this I would like to walk you through the available funds. Each year, as I mentioned, we receive an annual allocation. We don't know what the final amount is, and we won't until later in this fiscal year. So we usually just estimate based on prior year's allocations, and it usually is within the ballpark. So for CBDG, we anticipate roughly $610,000 and $285,000 in home funding. We usually do have some rollover funding or uncommitted funding, and in the next fiscal year, we anticipate that to be $651,000, as well as $336,000 in home funds. And to supplement those 2 sources of funding, we have a third source, which is program income. So we also don't usually know exactly what that is until it arrives, but it's usually in the form of loans that we've provided developers over the years and them repaying those loans. So we have had a large amount of program income in the last few years, so that trend we expect to continue. So with that in mind, we're anticipating about $250,000 in CBDG funding and $500,000 in home funding. So altogether, we anticipate a budget of just over $1.5 million for CBDG and $1,121,000 for home. So in total, the annual action plan is governing $2,632,000. As I mentioned, we supplement those public service agencies with a little bit of general funds, and that budget is $278,273. So how are we going to spend the money? We are allowed to use 20% of the budget for administration costs. We are also allowed to use 15% of the CBDG bucket only for the public services. We are then sort of free to carve up the remaining money as the annual action plan will allow for. So we are proposing the lion's share go to capital projects, which in the past has gone to fund projects like the Crestview Hotel, which some of you may remember, or other affordable housing projects. In this case, between the CBDG and home, the budget will be in the order of $2,130,000. In addition, we have historically funded a minor home repair program. This year, I believe in the fall, you instructed staff to look at increasing the grant amounts as well as increasing the number of households served, which we are doing, and I'll talk about that in a little further detail. As I mentioned, since we don't know exactly what our budget or sources are will be, we don't want to make any adjustments to the public services budget. And we won't make any adjustments to the minor home repair. So any fluctuations in our anticipated amounts received will sort of fall to that capital projects budget. So that's the one that has the most flexibility within our budget that we are hoping for and we could potentially anticipate at this point. So the CBDG public services that we're funding, that we funded this fiscal year, that we are proposing to fund in the next fiscal year, include CSA, the homelessness prevention, as well as the senior services case management, Life Moves, Next Door Solutions to Domestic Violence, Senior Adults Legal Assistance, Silicon Valley Independent Living Center, and Vista Center for the Blind. As I mentioned, these amounts are not changing from last year. Just a little further on the general fund public services, as I mentioned, the city supplements the CBDG funds through the general fund. In fiscal year 23-24, we had initially budgeted 171,000, but we supplemented with some ARPA funds in order to fully fund all of the applicants. So we're continuing this in the next year by providing the same budget. So, yes.
When can we ask questions?
Oh, as soon as I'm done, I've got 3 more slides. Yeah, but no?
No.
Need to,
We'll
we'll
have a
tend to forget the question that I have.
Hold them to the end because we do have some recusals that will.
Right.
Thank you.
You can write down the question, so you don't forget.
All right, so the public service agencies that are funded through the general fund include the Community School of Music and Arts, CSA Senior Nutrition Program, the Day Worker Center, both the Healthy Meals Program and the Job Placement Program, Healthier Kids Foundation, Junior Achievement of Northern America, South County Community Health Center, Parents Helping Parents, the Health Trust, and YWCA. So at the October 5th, 2023, the HRC supported the recommendation to provide direct allocations to both capital projects as well as the minor home repair program that I mentioned earlier. So of the $2,130,000 in capital projects, a project will be identified throughout the fiscal year with a priority being on affordable housing. The minor home repair program, as I mentioned, we're increasing the budget from $30,000 this current fiscal year to $180,000 for fiscal year 24-25. So staff have worked with Rebuilding Together to increase the grant amounts from $5,000 up to $15,000 and to increase the number of households from 6 households to 12 households. The increased grant amount will allow for an expanded level of service. $5,000 was not enough with the increasing labor costs, with increasing, great, everyone's on the same page. So we can now provide services that include roof repairs, accessibility conversions, furnace replacements, and volunteer-led painting and landscaping. Just a few quick next steps. Council will consider the recommendations and the adoption of the annual action plan that is subsequently submitted to HUD once we have received our notification of our final allocation grant amounts. So with that, staff recommends that the HRC make the following recommendations for City Council consideration: to adopt the fiscal year 2024-25 annual action plan for the CBDG and home funds, to allocate approximately $2,130,000 for capital projects, including affordable housing projects, to allocate $180,000 in CDBG funds to Rebuilding Together Peninsula for the minor home repair program. And finally, to allocate $278,724 from the general fund to supplement the Public Service Agency's recommended funding. So with that, I will turn it back to the chair. To the commission for staff are available for questions, or we can open for public comment.
Yeah, so before thank you so much for that presentation, very clear and good details, and I can see some of our recommendations were taken into consideration, especially the number 3, allocating more money to building home repair. So before we can begin discussion on these items, the consideration of funding recommendations for the Community Services Agency requires members of the commission to recuse themselves due to conflict of interest. So staff will explain how commission discussion and deliberations on this item will proceed. So I'll turn this over to Laurel to explain.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So because we do have potential conflicts of interest in the room related to the Community Services Agency funding, we'll have those commissioners with conflicts recuse themselves. The remaining commissioners will discuss only the CSA funding recommendations. There's one in the CDBG bucket and one in the general fund bucket. If there are any questions, we'll ask them about those 2 funding recommendations specifically. Then we'll open public comment, and then the commission will take action on that recommendation, whether to forward it to counselor. Once that section of the discussion is complete, we will invite the commissioners who recuse themselves back into the room and complete the discussion with the remaining recommendations, and then move forward from there. So with that, I'll hand it back to the chair.
Okay. So the commissioners who have the conflict of interest, please make your recusal statements. You can go ahead.
Commissioner Chadwell, I'm recusing myself from this discussion of the Community Services Agency funding recommendations due to my position on the board of the Community Services Agency. I have not participated and will not be participating in the recommendation to council regarding CSA funding in any way.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear half of that.
Oh, let me read it again.
I don't know.
Okay, she's about to go,
Vice
yeah.
Chair Sylvester will read as well, so you can hear her. And she's sitting next to you, so
Hopefully that'll help.
please speak loud.
I will dramatize it. I am recusing myself from this discussion of the Community Services Agency funding recommendations due to my position on the board of the Community Services Agency. I have not participated and will not be participating in the recommendation to council regarding CSA funding in any way.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. If you could
Thank
mute
you
yourselves
both.
now, please. So as a reminder for the rest of the commission, the discussion will we go through now will be questions, public comment, and action, if any, on the CSA items only. The rest of the items we'll discuss when they come back. So we do have to bifurcate the discussion for potential conflict of interest. So with that, I'll hand it back to the chair.
So the commission will now proceed with discussion for the Community Services Agency funding recommendations. All other funding recommendations will be discussed when the commissioners return. Does any member of the commission have questions on the CSA funding recommendations only? Commissioner questions? Floor is yours. You have any?
At this point, I don't know when my question is relevant, but I was curious about what the 25,000 would be used for by Life Moves, because it sounds like either a small thing or a small part of something bigger.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald. Because that's not related to the Community Services Agency funding request, we'll be discussing that when the other 2 commissioners
Okay.
return and
Yeah.
can participate in the discussion.
That's what I thought.
But you got it off your chest. So that's good.
You have to repeat it.
Now we know.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Clayton.
Thank you, Chair Wukidu, and thank you, staff, for the report. I did have a question regarding CSA's appropriation or number of people that will be served. The number, I can't find it right now, but I think it was roughly 5,121 people who will be served based off the amount given. How did y'all get to that number of people served?
Okay, I can take a shot at this. Usually during an application period, or like when we have our NOFA, all of our grantees will request the funding, and then they will tell us how many people they're going to be serving. And then we just, throughout the year, they have to report on whether or not they're meeting those numbers. So it's going to vary from organization to organization on the way, like, how they like count those. And I don't know about them specifically, so I couldn't like talk to that. I can only say that the numbers is usually what they provide us.
So following around those terms then, and given that this is the second year of us renewing the CDBG funds, is there any way we take into account whether they are meeting that threshold of
Yes.
the metrics given?
So part of their contract that we sign for 2 years is that we will renew it based on their performance of this year. So they do quarterly reports every quarter. We monitor to see whether or not they're on track. If they're not, how are we going to get them there? And then based on that, their funding recommendations get made. And if they're more or less within the ballpark, ordinarily, we would recommend them for funding.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I also think they have an intake process, so they're able to track how many people they serve. So I think that's where they're also probably pulling their numbers from.
Right.
Yeah.
So quickly, I keep hearing this term ballpark. And from an accounting perspective, ballpark is huge, right? Are we looking at 5%, 10%? Can you give us percentages instead of just saying this random, like, huge numbers? 'Cause
In
that helps
terms
us-
of whether or not we would fund them based on their performance? Is that what you're saying?
In this case, yeah, but you said it earlier today, so when you throw out that number, like that random term, it doesn't give us anything specific.
Yeah,
It can be a plus or minus 3%, like if you're doing your estimates.
it's a good question. It's sort of a case by case basis. If we have an organization that is continually not meeting their objectives, we would want the quote unquote ballpark to be closer to a smaller number. If it is some, like an organization that this is the first time they're struggling, maybe it's a staffing issue, maybe the grant funding hasn't been sufficient, then we may work with them for that to be, within sort of 20%. It depends on how much money we are providing them to. So it's very difficult to like give you a hard and fast answer. I'd need a scenario to tell you about whether or not we would be providing a recommendation. I've worked with this program in other cities, and for those that consistently aren't meeting their numbers, we'd need to then, or the households or the person served, we then either need to be reducing the grant amount or not funding. So it's really just a case by case basis. These are good questions though.
Thank you.
I guess that kind of falls in line. So in the report, at one point, y'all referenced combining CSA and Life Moves in order to create much more affordable housing projects in order to serve. I think there was like a number of 5 families that would be probably served from Life Moves in combination with the CSA 5,000 number. Is there a reason why those quantity, the amount being served to these 2 agencies were combined for that matter?
I have to take a look at what part of the report you're referring to. You know the answer to the question?
Need to find it again, because I.
Yeah.
We'll find it again.
Yes, good evening, Wayne Chen, Housing Director.
Okay.
Yes, if you could point us to the specific numbers, we can follow back up and provide the information to Laurel. And also just to provide, Julie was exactly right, it can be a case-by-case
Right.
situation. We also do have to report to HUD every single year through the annual performance process. And so what we've incorporated is a quarterly invoice progress report process with each of the grantees. And then if there are any issues that come up or if we need to check in, we do so. So the quarterly report does help us, and then we have to report out to HUD. So if there are any situations where we feel like maybe the performance needs to be discussed or monitored, then we can also schedule meetings just to help keep things on track. But all those pieces are also part of the annual report. So those are just some tools in addition to what Julia was saying to help us take a look and help support the recipients. Yeah. So do let us know, we can follow up.
Thank you, Wayne.
Back to you on that number.
Are there any other questions from the commission? No? Okay, since there are no more questions from the commission, I will now open to the public for any comments.
So,
No.
no, this would be public comment specifically on the CSA
CSA.
funding recommendations.
Yes.
So if anybody in the room or online would like to comment on those specific aspects, now would be the time. Thank you, Chair.
So would any member of the public like to comment on the CSA funding recommendations only? Is there any online? None? No. Okay, so seeing there's none, we can say thank you to all those who made comments. I will now close the public hearing as well and bring the item back for commission deliberation action on the CSA agency funding recommendations only. A motion is required to take action on this item.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I am absolutely delighted to see the amount of money that is allocated by, for various services, the uses. I think I haven't done any in-depth research about it, but I think that Mountain View is exceptional in these areas.
Okay, so commissioner deliberation and action is supposed to be focused on CSA only. So. Any other comments? Okay, so since there are no other comments, a motion is required to take action on this item.
So moved.
Wait, what's the proper way to say the motion for this? We're moving it over to funding?
Moving the CSA recommendations for funding specifically, so that if there's a motion to support the staff recommendation for the CSA funding.
I motion to move forward the CSA recommended funding item forward, staff recommended.
Point of clarification, Commissioner Clicone, are you seconding?
Are you seconding?
Seconding.
Yeah. Okay, I was
Yeah, and also
confused for a
clarifying the
minute.
motion. Just for the point of order.
Thank you
Yeah,
for the-
for
yeah.
clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
So with motion so moved. So we can call back the other commissioners, right?
We take a vote.
Oh, take a vote, right? Take a vote, yes. Okay, so all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I will collect our commissioners.
Questions right now.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, welcome back. Welcome back, Commissioner Chadwell and Vice Chair Sylvester. Okay, so we're going to move along. Okay, the commission will now discuss and act on the remainder of the public services funding and capital project funding recommendations. Does any member of the commission have questions on the recommendations excluding the Community Services Agency recommendation?
I have a clarification question, just for my own understanding. So I'm looking at the numbers on page 3 on just the main attachments and the memorandum 6.1. Anyway, and so it's talking about how the city received program income in the form of loan repayments. And that I understand that number fluctuates. And it looks like there's 566,000 and 823,000-ish respectively last year. My question is, it looks like we're estimating 250,000 and 500,000 for the upcoming year. I'm wondering, why is the number so much lower? Is that sort of just a conservative estimate?
Yes, exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Because I understand that it's saying, you know, it's received relatively large amounts of program income in past years. Do you have any reason to believe that trend will be changing a lot, or?
So, yeah, it is very, very difficult to estimate. I think historically, the number has been like under 6 figures, I want to say.
Oh, wow, so this is a lot bigger.
Correct. So now we're being very conservative with the $250,000, but we have been making efforts to try and trace all of the loans that are out there to try and have a sense of when we may be getting repayments, but it's very difficult to know if and when those loans are going to be paid back.
Okay.
So
So the discrepancy is not because, or not discrepancy, but the difference is not because we know something's gonna change, but just because we wanna be very conservative. And then regarding that, I understand that if we were to get more than these numbers, you know, if the trend continued, any remaining would go to the capital improvement projects, the affordable housing projects.
correct.
It would all go to that, or is there any possibility of any of it remaining unallocated? I'm not quite sure how that works.
Both. It depends. So it's really difficult, again, to say, because we also don't know what time of year the program income comes in.
Right.
So it may be that it comes in May after we've already programmed all of the funding for the year. So then it would be rollover funding.
Okay.
Because we've received it too late in the year to program it and spend it.
Okay. So that explains why we sometimes have it from there
Correct.
allocated. I was
Exactly.
wondering about that. I'm like,
Yeah.
why are we not just
Yeah.
using this? Like,
Exactly. Yeah,
All a timing issue.
yeah.
correct.
So I'm a little,
Thank you.
I'm a little confused at why the city doesn't have this data available already. You have the loans that are outstanding. You have them set up in some database, some spreadsheet or something, and you have them a rolling table on when the loans are due and if they're collected or not collected. And it should have been done ages ago. So I don't understand why, because that helps us estimate.
Yeah, and that is a program we're working on currently. Many of these loans are extremely old, beyond 30 years.
Nice. Wow.
So we don't, and some of them, there's just like a history of record keeping over 30 years. I don't think it's unusual for any organization to struggle with keeping track of something like that, but it's certainly something that we are working on very hard to try and understand what our portfolio looks like and to proactively reach out to those with loans to try and understand with
So
them.
is this an issue of the information being like in boxes somewhere and it has to be transferred digitally or?
Basically, I would say so, Wayne. That sounds about right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to add, there's a couple of things. Number one, we are looking to lift up and create an asset management system to start tracking all the affordable housing pieces. Bigger picture, most of the loans that are made for affordable housing projects, usually from cities, are soft loans because we know that the loans need to be set up in a way for affordable housing developments to be financially viable. And so part of that is it's quite typical for loans to be paid back on a schedule that's not like ones that we have to deal with on a mortgage, where it's every month you pay it back. And so many cases, the affordable housing projects will pay back loans that they can when they can. And that is what makes the affordable housing financing a bit different and why it's not necessarily regular payments. when it comes to these projects. So that is a part of it as well. Yes.
I had a question regarding that. So given it's a loan, I didn't know there was a soft loan. Does that mean that there's still like a fixed interest to that soft loan that keeps accumulating over a period of time of what's gonna be owed back to the city? And I'm guessing since this has been taking place over a long period of time, that amount becomes so exorbitant that they may not be able to be paid back. So what would we do in that situation?
Yeah, typically what will happen is a developer will, when they're figuring out the financing for a project, factors in the borrowing costs and it goes into the calculations and the pro forma and projections are made. But I believe for these older loans as well, there is usually a 3% simple interest, which is sort of how we've set up the loans historically. And those have always been also less than the market rate loans as well. So they are at reduced rates. It does accrue, but then because they're a soft type of loan, that there is the possibility of working with the developer in terms of payments and the timing of those.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners? No? Okay. I will now open the public to public hearing on the rest of the funding recommendations. Would any
Chair, I'm sorry, before we move on, I wanted to make sure we circle back to Commissioner McDonald's question from.
Oh,
earlier.
yeah, that's right. She had a question. Could you repeat your question?
Life Moves is
Thank you.
allocate, or there's an allocation of $25,000 to Life Moves. And I'm curious about what they anticipate they're going to use that 25,000 for, because it seems very low for a big project and very big for a small project.
Is it any sense of what we plan for,
I'm
what the activities are you looking it up?
gonna look it up.
Okay, give us a minute. We don't know the answer to that. I think my best guess is we fund parts of a larger project, but it would be in the application. So if you bear with us for a few minutes.
Could you confirm the subrecipient?
Like,
Oh,
I don't think it's there.
I have it. Okay. And that was under the CDBG bucket. Commissioner McDonald, you mentioned a $25,000 amount, right?
Yeah, 25,550 exact.
They're on page 25. That helps.
5 individuals.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one is for funding for a case manager to assist with their long-term transitional housing site in Mountain View. And the main purpose is for the case management to help residents in this interim housing site to transition to permanent housing. The reason why it's 5 is that the graduate house can only house up to 8 individuals at a time. So it's not a big site.
Yeah.
And it does take a lot of effort to help folks find permanent housing to transition to. So that's where the 5 comes in, and that's where the dollar amount comes in to support the case manager.
The reason I asked the question is that when the Leghorn Life Moves first opened and filled, they said they were going to find supportive housing or permanent housing for people, and they would provide a case manager. Well, the case managers came and went, and apparently, from what I've heard of other life moves developments, they learned a lot from the mistakes they made in Mountain View. And I'm concerned that those mistakes don't happen again, because the people were not really helped to find supportive housing and were booted out before they did. And they had never seen a case manager or had seen one once. And that was it. And I guess I'm overly concerned, or maybe appropriately concerned, that that does not happen again. It doesn't say we respect you It doesn't say we want you to have a dignified life.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. A couple of things. I think we can certainly bring back the comment that we've heard here today as well to we partner with Human Services on this as well, and we coordinate closely. And there's a lot of active coordination also with Life Moves. And so we'll continue to bring back information, Life Moves, and in terms of their operations. The Lakehorn project was the first of its kind in the state through Project Home Key. And so I think there has been learning that's been able to be applied elsewhere and here. We are proud of the fact that it is the first Home Key project of its kind, and also there's always opportunities to improve. This particular funding is for a different project, long established. It's a smaller project of 8 units. And so the funding is not related to the Lakehorn project, but we also hear the importance of Lakehorn operating well. So thank you for the feedback. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and move on now. Oh, there are more questions? Okay, go ahead.
I just have another question on, just more me understanding the layout of this. Is minor home repair, I understand why we're discussing it, or specifically because we're changing the number and I'm supportive of that. It's a separate line item. What's it called? Brain. Does this fall under public services normally? And it's just, okay.
No.
So it'll remain a separate line item for
Yes.
future iterations
Yes.
of this report?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
When you had your hand up too?
Yeah, I did. I was trying to find the number, but separate question, just for understanding. So we tend to take the maximum of 50% with the regards of reservation from an actual fund to use for public services. Is there a reason why we usually take the max amount and not any less than that? Is it just to give the service agency more than what we provide?
Yeah, I think we try to maximize the amount that we can provide wherever possible.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Okay, we will now open to public hearing on the rest of the funding recommendations. Would any of the member of the public like to comment on the fund recommendations? If so, please submit a blue speaker card to staff if you haven't already done so. Do you have any?
So first, public speaking is Melissa Lukin from Rebuilding Together Peninsula.
Hi, Melissa.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Melissa Lukin. I'm the Executive Director of Rebuilding Together Peninsula, and my colleague Greg Bernard here is our Director of Programs. We're very pleased to be back working in the city of Mountain View, and it's been delightful to work with Julie and Wayne on moving forward with our work. You may know that for the last 35 years, we've served members of the community in northern Santa Clara County and mostly providing affordable home ownership. And the way we like to think of it is through our safe and healthy repairs and modifications. The average home household income was $35,000 last year. So we're very grateful for renewing our ability to rehabilitate low and moderate income homeowners for in doing so. Together, we have preserved affordable home ownership, addressed unsafe living conditions, lowered the housing costs through energy efficient improvements, and allowed seniors to age in place. Your support has made it possible for folks to really to buy groceries and have heat, to afford to pay for their medications and be able to live in a safe home. We're on track to meet our deliverables this year. However, as has been recommended in terms of our increase, we're really grateful for the possibility of your considering the fact that most of the folks that we work with are living in much more aged homes than they have been in, over the past generation when we started this work, that we live in the second most expensive construction environment in the world next to New York, and that the inflation costs make it virtually impossible for folks to pay for even a simple HVAC system at $5,000 a project. So unlike years ago, we have to choose between repairing a furnace or a hot water heater when neither is functional. making sure that folks live in a warm house or have a ramp that they need for their disability. So I just wanted to thank you very much for considering the increase so that we can continue to provide the much needed services in Mountain View. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Actually, sorry.
No, we're both in the same one.
I'm trying to think back to when we had the first HRC meeting where budgets were brought up. Cause I remember, I believe you spoke there or someone from your organization.
Yeah.
And I remember the question was brought up, does your program cover mobile homes? And I'm wondering, to be honest, I can't remember the answer. I think it was no.
Yes, it was.
And I'm wondering if this increased budget could potentially change that or just where you're at on that.
Yeah. No, yes and yes. So, yeah, most of the requests, I believe, have been mobile homes.
Most of them are, yes.
Yeah, cause I know there's a lot of them that have been there for a long time and
Right.
it's kind of,
Yes.
stuck in something that they feel like they can't get out of because it might not be safe to live there anymore.
Yes, exactly. Although it's challenging to find vendors that will serve mobile homes,
Right.
we have persevered, so it's
It's kind of a specialty contractor thing or.
yeah.
It's a different world when you get into a manufactured house instead of what they call stick building.
Okay.
So we still find people and we've had a lot of, we had a big project with the county at San Mateo last year that we found a lot more vendors. So we're in a better place now than we were.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Poso. You have a question too?
Feels similar.
Oh, same? Oh, okay. All right. Wow.
No, that's why I was just like, I'm okay.
All right. Thank you, Melissa, and your
Thank
team
you.
member
Really
for being
appreciate
here. Okay. All right, thank you. And I will now close the public hearing and bring the item back for commission deliberation and action on the public services and capital projects funding recommendations excluding Community Services Agency, CSA recommendation. A motion is required to take action on this item. And I'm going to read everything again so we can all remember what we're making a motion on. Does the commission recommend that the city council, one, adopt fiscal year 2024 to 2025 action plan attached to the agenda? And does the commission recommend that the city council allocate community development block grant funding and general fund monies to fund the plan as described in the memo and attachments? And does the commission recommend that the city council allocate $180,000 in community development block grant funding for the minor home repair program?
I motion to move forward with all the staff recommendations from item 1 to 4.
Second.
All right, so, all in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being here, Julian. Thank you for being here, Wayne.
Stuff. I think it's spoon fed to me.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, now to item 7. Commission staff comments, questions, and commission reports. No discussion or action will be taken on any questions raised by the commission at this time. To be reminded, state law prohibits the commission from discussing or acting on substantive non-agenda items. So this, yeah. Do we have a good? Oh. It's now open to commissioner, if you have any comments, questions. Yes.
Actually, if it's appropriate, I have a question for staff regarding something that came up in the open public comment about what HRC can do on the matter brought to us about the ceasefire and what we actually are allowed to do with regard to making referral to council.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner, thank you, Vice Chair for the question. It was brought up at the HRC meeting. I referenced council policy 820, which is related to the work item referral process for council advisory bodies and council member committees. And I do want to refer back to that policy. Our most germane version states that during the course of the year following the work plan approval, which is the section of the year that we're in, if a topic is raised that's within the advisory body's purview, and is on the approved work plan, and receives support, majority support from the advisory board body members, then the advisory body member, if they wish to review the topic, and it's determined by the city manager in consultation with advisory body staff that preparation for the review would have minimal staff resources impact. Then after the consultation, the mayor and vice mayor can jointly authorize the work for their advisory body. So in addition to that, if the mayor and vice mayor don't jointly authorize, then full council authorization can take the place of that. That said, one of the key provisions here is within the purview of the advisory body. And the purview of the HRC and the resolution establishing the HRC is issues concerning non-discrimination, diversity, and cultural awareness in the community. Issues relating to barriers which may preclude residents from participating in their local government and or community and assessing the relevance of programs to the needs of the community. And issues concerning outreach to diverse segments of the population and soliciting input from the community. And with those three things, specifically like foreign policy and international affairs aren't included. And additionally, I would note for the purposes of Council Policy 823, the intent is for advisory bodies or committees to bring issues to council and raise them to their awareness. Whereas in this case, the issue is an issue that council is already aware of and has discussed and provided direction on. So there are limitations based on the policy and the situation, as well as the purview of the HRC as to what the HRC can work on, provide direction or advice to council on, or undertake as a commission, as opposed to as individuals. Does that answer the question, Vice Chair?
Mostly. If commissioners had an issue, not the specific issue that we thought fit within that, within the charter of this body, and we had a majority agreement, what would happen if there was disagreement with staff if it fit the charter?
So,
Like, how does that does this fit us? How does that get determined?
well, I mean, it could be determined by the council essentially.
True,
As
but
they pass the resolution. In this case, I think that the resolution has been fairly broadly interpreted and we haven't yet run into a situation where something that the commission has wanted to work on has not fallen within that purview. Now, as you may recall from the work planning process, staff does provide recommendations and analysis based on that purview.
Yeah.
And we have a discussion in that framework.
That's true.
That'll be my response to that.
Thank you. It's
Thank
very
you.
thorough.
Where do we go from here?
Well, if I may interject, it also is not something that you can undertake a substantive discussion on.
Right.
To do right now.
Yeah.
It's not an agendized item. If there was an indication from the majority of commissioners to agendize the item, then we would have to have this discussion under the policy, which again would be that test of, is this under the commission's purview? Can we agendize it? Is it going to take a bunch of staff time? Is it, all of these things that we just covered from policy?
Right. Okay. Are there any other comments from commissioners? Did you want to mention anything about the tentative date for the multicultural
Because it's not publicized and it's not finalized.
Yeah, okay.
It's not something that I'm prepared to comment
Okay.
on.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted
Yeah, so
to,
did I.
yeah, just in case people, it's on people's minds, in a sense, you reached out to us.
As I said, I can provide the update that the Multicultural Festival looks like it will be rescheduled for in the not too distant future. And I will provide you with updates
Yeah, but not
as they
finalized.
become available.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Everybody's gonna start
Keep an eye on
retracting
my
their
posters
message.
that I made.
Are there any other comments from the commissioners? Okay. Tell me what your staff then.
I have no
You have
further
none?
updates or comments. Thank you.
Wow, okay. So anyway, our next regular meeting for the Human Relations Commission will be held May 2nd at 6:30 PM here in the Plaza Conference Room via Zoom and as well. And so what time is it now? 7:36. Well, it is 7:36 PM and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for attending and have a good evening, everyone. Wow.
Wow.